The auction block stank of fear and disinfectant. Saren Vale stood in the back row of the cargo hold, wrists bound in neural suppressors that hummed against his skin. Around him, dozens of other species waited their turn, some weeping, some silent, all defeated. The Korthax slavers had been efficient in their raid on the mining colony. Efficient and brutal. Saren's eyes tracked the movement near the front platform. A slaver, one of the mid-ranking overseers with mottled gray skin and 4 arms, was dragging something small across the metal grating. The chain clinked with each yank, and at the end of it, a tiny form tumbled and rolled. HFY. The cub was barely the size of a house cat, covered in silver-blue fur that caught the harsh overhead lights. Its species, the Velnar, were apex predators on their homeworld, but this one was young. Too young. Its eyes were closed, body limp, paws dangling as the slaver jerked it forward like a sack of cargo. Lot 47, the auctioneer's translator crackled. Juvenile Velnar. Untrained. Suitable for exotic collections or blood sport. Opening bid. The slaver yanked the chain again, harder this time, clearly annoyed that the cub wasn't putting on a show. HFY's small body slid across the platform, head lolling. Still asleep. Or unconscious. Saren couldn't tell which. Something old and cold settled in Saren's chest. Humans had been in the galactic community for only 37 years. Long enough to learn that most species viewed them as curiosities, durable, adaptable, but ultimately, unremarkable. Deathworlders, yes, but not the terrifying kind. Not like the Velnar or the Kreth or the Solgrim who could tear through starship hulls with their bare claws. Humans were the kind of Deathworlder you could chain up and sell. The slaver raised one of his 4 arms, gesturing dismissively at the unresponsive cub. Defective specimen, he muttered in Galactic Standard, just loud enough for the front rows to hear. But pedigree bloodline? Gene tests confirm? He yanked the chain again. The snap echoed through the hold. Saren moved. The neural suppressors were designed to lock down voluntary muscle control, to keep slaves compliant. But they were designed for species with predictable neurological patterns. Humans, stubborn, stupid humans had spent 37 years learning to work around that. Meditation techniques. Biofeedback. Pain tolerance training that would make a monk weep. Saren's instructors at the colony had called it the override. He called it spite. His legs moved. 3 steps. The chains between his ankles dragged but didn't stop him. The suppressors shrieked in protest, overloading as his nervous system brute forced through the feedback loop. Blood vessels burst in his eyes, his muscles screamed. He didn't care. The slaver's 4 eyes went wide as Saren's hands, still bound, wrapped around his neck from behind. No, not his neck, his spine. Humans had studied Korthax anatomy. Everyone who worked in contested space knew the basics. 4 arms meant distributed musculature. Exoskeletal plating meant limited flexibility. And their spines, their beautiful, terrible spines, had a weak point exactly 42 centimeters below the cranial ridge. Saren's thumbs found it. The slaver opened his mouth to scream. Saren twisted. The sound was wet and wrong, like snapping green wood. The slaver's legs gave out instantly, all 4 arms spasming as his nervous system catastrophically failed. He hit the platform face first. Twitching, silence crashed over the hold. Saren stood over the fallen slaver, chest heaving, blood streaming from his nose and ears. The suppressors were burning his wrists now, smoke rising from the contact points. He didn't move toward them. Instead, he knelt slowly, deliberately, and picked up the chain. HFY lay on the platform, curled in a small ball. Still sleeping. The cub's chest rose and fell in slow, peaceful rhythm. One ear twitched. Saren's hands shook as he worked the collar loose. It was mag-locked, but the slaver's biometrics were still registering. Barely. Saren pressed the dead hand against the release panel, and the collar clicked open. The cub didn't wake up. Around them, chaos erupted. Guards rushing forward, weapons charging, prisoners shouting, the auctioneer screaming into his communicator. Saren gathered the small, sleeping form against his chest and straightened. Anyone else want to yank his chain? His voice came out hoarse, damaged from the suppressor's feedback. He looked at the approaching guards, then at the other slavers on the platform. Because I've got 2 hands and a very specific skill set. The Korthax captain, 10 feet tall, armed with a plasma lance, stepped forward. His mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. You've just killed a registered slaver in front of 40 witnesses, human. You've signed your death warrant. Yeah. Saren cradled Rukai closer. The cub's fur was soft against his burned arms. Still sleeping. Still peaceful. Probably. Though, you can't fight all of us. Don't need to fight all of you. Saren's smile was broken teeth and blood. Just need to make sure the next person who touches this kid does it gently. The captain's weapon hummed to life. Around him, 24 guards leveled their rifles. Saren didn't move. Didn't run. Just stood there, holding a sleeping cub against his chest, looking at them with eyes that had gone somewhere far beyond fear. The standoff held for 3 heartbeats. Then somewhere in the back rows, another prisoner broke free. Then another. Then 5 more. The suppressors hadn't been designed for the kind of coordinated override Saren had just demonstrated, and humans learned fast. The cargo hold erupted. When the riot finally ended, when the colony's rescue ships arrived, and the Korthax vessel was seized, they found Saren in the corner of the hold, still conscious, still holding Rukai. The cub was purring in its sleep. The medics had to pry Saren's arms open to take the small form for examination. His hands had locked in place, muscles seized from the neural damage. They told him later that he'd broken 6 bones in his own arms from the suppressor's feedback, that he'd permanently damaged his peripheral nervous system. He watched them carry Rukai to the medbay, the cub's tail swishing lazily, and smiled. Worth it. When Rukai finally woke up 3 hours later, warm and safe and fed, the first thing the cub did was yawn. The second thing was look around in confusion at the clean, quiet medical bay, clearly wondering where the scary place had gone. The cub never knew about the chain, never knew about the slaver, never knew about the human who'd torn through neural suppressors and broken a spine with his bare hands just to make sure no one yanked him around anymore. Saren watched through the observation window as Velnar diplomats arrived to retrieve their lost youngling. Rukai was playing with a medical scanner, pouncing on the blinking lights, completely oblivious. You could have died, the colony administrator said quietly beside him. For a creature you'd never met. Saren watched the cub play. Yeah. Was it worth it? The human looked at his bandaged hands, at the neural damage readouts on his medical charts, at the sleeping cub who'd never know his name. Every second. The galaxy learned something that day. Not about humans being warriors. Not about humans being fearless. They learned that humans were the kind of stupid, stubborn, suicidal deathworlders who'd wreck themselves beyond repair over a principle, over a kid, over the simple, terrible fact that some things shouldn't be yanked on chains. And that made them the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. Not because they could kill you, because they'd break themselves to pieces making sure you never hurt anyone else again. Rukai yawned again and settled down for another nap. Small paws tucked under his chin, completely unaware that his entire species' diplomatic stance on humanity had just shifted. The cub slept soundly, dreaming peaceful dreams, and Saren Vale smiled through the pain, knowing that was exactly how it should be.